had some mojo, nearly beat UCLA,
ranked.
and then had run out of gas the next week.
Joining us now on the Deseret First Credit Union Hotline is Barry Tramel of the Oklahoman, college football expert, and I believe covering the NBA playoffs as well right now. He's a busy guy, but we'll start with college football, Barry. Nice to have you back on BYU Sports Nation.
Glad to be here, guys.
Does the University of Oklahoma, and I'm talking like as a consensus, do they want expansion in the Big 12?
Consensus really doesn't matter. The president wants it. David Bourne wants it. And that's all that really matters. So the answer is yes. There's probably some regions. There are some regions. There are some university leaders who would prefer status quo or going to another conference. But David Bourne wants the Big 12 to survive and wants it feels like expansion is necessary for that survival. And that's really the only voice that matters.
So do the regents, what say do they have in this then? Because, Max Weizenhofer, the chairman, said some things the other day, yet you're saying it does. In the end, it won't matter. It's just what David Bourne wants?
I think that's right. University of Oklahoma historically for decades and decades was run by the regents. The president was not a figurehead, but he definitely was subservient to the regents. But David Bourne got here 22 years ago from the U.S. Senate and sort of changed the politics, the dynamics of university administration. It's much more like a monarchy than in the old days. He doesn't really run the regents, but they pretty much give him free gate to make decisions. And when there is some kind of loggerheads, when they're not in agreement with each other, Bourne usually wins. So I think there's, Max Weizenhofer saying that he was not interested in expansion. He's really interested, I think, in going elsewhere. So I think Bourne will win the day in terms of Oklahoma's stance. Now, that doesn't mean the Big 12 is going to expand, but it does mean that Bourne definitely, I think, will have the Oklahoma push will be for Big 12 expansion.
Barry Tramel with us on BYU Sports Nation. You have opened up a couple of very intriguing doors here with your comments, Barry. And first of all, I want to talk about the fact that Oklahoma wants some sort of change, whether it's expansion in the Big 12. If the Big 12 does not expand, what is the chance that Oklahoma leaves for another conference, and where do you think they would go if that happens?
Well, I think it's a distinct possibility, but I think it's down the road. I don't think it's in the next year or two. First of all, the grant of rights, the Big 12 has it. So Oklahoma's not going anywhere for several years. But I think once we get past the 2020 threshold, which frankly is not that far away, but once we get closer to the 24, 25 years when the grant of rights and the TV contracts end, then I think if the Big 12 really hasn't progressed, if it hasn't really transformed itself, then I think Oklahoma would be likely to leave. And where they would go, who knows? The Pac-12, I think, would be what I would pick as the favorite, but not any kind of overwhelming favorite. I think there's a lot of support for the SEC because of the football culture. Academically, people like the Pac-12. The Big Ten is probably not an option because Oklahoma is not a member of the AAU, the Association of American Universities, which Sooners have been trying to get into for many years. Maybe someday they'll get there. If they do, they may be in the Big Ten. But I think it's most likely Pac-12, but certainly that's not a heavy favorite right now.
That's an interesting comment about that Association of Universities. Why would that keep them out of the Big Ten?
The Big Ten has never everybody in the Big Ten was a member of the AAU, and it basically was a requirement for admission. It's even to the point where in years past they've debated whether to invite Notre Dame. Notre Dame's not a member, and some people in the Big Ten didn't even want Notre Dame because of that. Now, Notre Dame never really, offered any kind of assurance that they would come. But the one thing that's changed is that when they added Penn State, of course, and then Rutgers and Nebraska and Maryland, all those are members. But after Nebraska got in the Big Ten, the AAU kicked Nebraska out of the Big Ten. They're ranking in some sort of research money or something. I don't claim to understand it, but they kicked Nebraska out. So not everybody in the Big Ten is a member right now of the AAU, but everybody that's ever been invited into the Big Ten is a member of the AAU. So there's not a lot of confidence that the Big Ten would ever come after a school that's not in the AAU.
Barry Tramel, featured on newsok.com. Follow him at Barry Tramel on the Twitter machine, is with us on BYU Sports Nation. We're talking about the Oklahoma program athletically, where they want to go, if they seek expansion, and where does BYU fit into that. So let's go that angle now, Barry. BYU on paper, according to Barry Switzer, which we thought was hilarious given his past with BYU, is the best fit for expansion in the Big 12. If David Boren is the most prominent voice, which you have said quite blatantly on the show today, does David Boren and Oklahoma want a team like BYU in the Big 12?
I don't know if there is. I don't know of a preference for David Boren, pro or con, on the Brigham Young. When I've talked to him about specific schools, he's frankly sort of dismissed it as he doesn't really care. If the Big 12 would go for expansion, he would let others, it sounds like, make that decision. So I don't think there's a consensus at Oklahoma, pro or con, on BYU. My impression is a lot of people in the Big 12 like Brigham Young. It's clearly the best football out there. It's clearly the best brand. Barry Switzer's right. It's really sort of it's a no-brainer, really. If you're going to expand, the Big 12 needs Brigham Young. There are some concerns. Whether they're legit or not, I don't know. But the Brigham Young has the reputation of being a power broker within its conference, somebody that likes to throw its weight around. I don't know why anybody would think BYU would come to a new conference and have the power to throw its weight around, but that's what some people fear. That's one of the things that got the Big 12 in trouble in the first place, was Texas's sort of overbearing personality. They don't want another one of those, although I've made the point, if you got an overbearing personality, one way to dissuade that is bring in another overbearing personality. So anyway, another private school I don't think is an issue, because Baylor and TCU, in the Big 12, we used to just have Baylor as a lone soldier in the Big 12, but now TCU's joined them, been an excellent member. It's not an issue. So I think Brigham Young would be fine. Some people worry about the geography. When the Big 12 added West Virginia, that gave the conference, went from Middle America to a slight eastern lean. Seems funny to some to lean back to the west and stretch the conference from Provo to Morgantown, West Virginia. Those are some of the biggest concerns about Brigham Young. But the truth of the matter is, when you're adding to your conference, it's really not even close. The people that are available, there are two classes of school, maybe three classes, but the first class is Brigham Young by itself. So, to me, if you're going to expand, you've clearly stated, everybody stated, the whole dang world has stated that football is what matters. If that is true, then you got to expand with Brigham Young.
I was just going to ask you, why wouldn't BYU be invited to the Big 12? You mentioned the overbearing personality and travel. Is there anything else that sticks out? Because we're sitting here at BYU going, one, hopefully the Big 12 expands, and two, will it be BYU? Those are the questions we're sitting on here.
Yeah, no, I think I listed the whatever the concerns are, and the truth is, the geography is an issue. It's a long way. We talk about how far, it is to Morgantown, West Virginia, and if you're in Oklahoma City, you can actually drive to Provo by going through only one other state. There's a dirt road that you can get from Oklahoma to Colorado. There's about 8 miles of border they share. It's not even a paved road, but you can actually get into Colorado without leaving the state of Oklahoma. So you could actually just go from Oklahoma to Utah by going through only one other state.
See, it's not that far, Barry.
Well, until you hear this, from Oklahoma City to Provo is farther than Oklahoma City to Morgantown. So it's a long way up there. And so that's a legitimate concern for your tennis teams and your golf teams and your softball teams and whatever other teams you got.
Yeah, and that's
so
the
that's
thing.
a concern.
That's the thing that people aren't talking
that's something
about.
they'd have to work through. That's something they'd have to work through.
Yeah, I think everyone gets caught up on the football travel.
People bring the football travel doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly.
And, Dana Holgerson's made this point since he's been in the league at West Virginia. He said, you get on a plane for every road game. He says, who cares if it's an hour flight or a 2-hour flight? What's the difference? It's not, nothing to it. But for the other sports, it does matter. The one other issue, which I think is a non-issue, is the Sunday play. I actually did a study a few months ago, went through all the Big 12 official sports that coincide with Brigham Young sports, and found out how many actually use Sunday play for regular season or postseason championship. And the real truth is it wouldn't be any big deal at all. Soccer might have to not finish on a Sunday. They got a Sunday championship game. The Big 12 men's basketball doesn't play on Sunday now with their tournament. The women do, but frankly, the women's basketball tournament is not a success at the gate wherever it goes right now. So why would you keep out a great football member just because you want to protect the women's basketball tournament? That doesn't make any sense at all. So the Sunday play can be worked around. You could do that in literally less than before lunch. Meet in the morning, and before lunch, that problem is solved.
I like the way you think, Barry.
Yeah, so, some of these things, the travel is an issue. Sunday play is not an issue.
Joined by Barry Tramel, Oklahoma columnist, sports editor, great writer. We'll finish with this. We know that Oklahoma, and David Bourne specifically, are pro-expansion, and that carries a lot of weight because he has a big voice in the Big 12, obviously. But Texas has been slow to the roll. Are there any other schools that are lobbying to prevent expansion that have a large voice in this other than Texas?
There are no schools that have come out that we know of that are anti-expansion. However, there's got to be some. I personally don't understand the non-expansion stance of a school other than Texas. I understand Texas's point. Texas has a great stance. Texas has the Longhorn Network. Texas has a $15 million payday from ESPN and gets its own network, and that's going to go another 14, 15 years. The Big 12 wants to expand in part because it wants to establish a conference network. So they're asking Texas to give up, not necessarily the money, because they would work it out where Texas would get the same money, but they're asking for Texas to give up its own network. I can see why Texas would drag its feet. I don't know why anybody else would. A conference network and expansion would really solidify the conference. It wouldn't lift it into the financial realm, I don't think, of the SEC and the Big Ten. But it would get it pretty far down the road so that in 5 or 10 years, you're not way behind those other conferences that you're competing against. I don't understand why a TCU, a Baylor, a Texas Tech, I don't understand why those schools would not want expansion. So, but there's got to be some, or I think, if the vote was 9-1, I don't even know if Texas could stand up to that. But it's a case of some people like the financial security the way it is. The pie is split 10 ways, not 12. It's a pretty big pie, much more than they've ever been getting. So, there's a little bit of pushback from conference expansion. But the truth is, some of the people that don't want expansion, it's not that they're against expansion, it's that they just don't see a viable two additions. And, that's the problem I had with the Big 12's lack of vision. 4 or 5 years ago, they added West Virginia 5 years ago. Louisville and West Virginia were the two candidates. They chose West Virginia. The television networks basically said, take West Virginia. So they did. I don't know. They should have taken Louisville at the same time for this reason. It's much easier to get to 12 from 11 than get to 12 from 10.
Absolutely.
And if you take Louisville 4 or 5 years ago, then you decide, let's get to 12, let's have a title game, let's do all these things. You got Brigham Young sitting there. You got a 12-team league, and you're not taking a flyer on anybody. But if you add Brigham Young now, you still are going to have to take a flyer on somebody. You're going to have to take a flyer on Cincinnati or Connecticut or Central Florida, schools that really haven't built their brand the way the Big 12 has and the way Brigham Young has. So that's the situation. Some people aren't against expansion. They're just saying, who are we going to expand with?
Barry, always a pleasure to talk to you. We appreciate the interesting tidbits that you bring to us from that part of the country. And we wish you the best of luck in your busy schedule with the Oklahoma City Thunder and the NBA playoffs and handling all this Big 12 madness.
Well, good luck to the Cougars. I think it'd be a great day if BYU can get in the Big 12.
You just gained 1,000 more Twitter followers, Barry. Thanks for the time, my friend.
See you guys later.
All righty. Barry Tramel on the Deseret First Credit Union Hotline. Deseret First, your values, your timeline, your